Three, two, one. Welcome to the ParaBiz Podcast. We are joined by Pi, Jay, and myself, Kay. Our topics today include grocery chains, train loots, Supreme Court, Florida, and BlackRock.
What a bundle of fun.
How we doing? All right. So, one of the first topic we're going to talk about today is grocery chains. And there's been some news in the U.S. today from Senator Elizabeth Warren talking about how one of the big reasons for inflation is the grocery chains. The grocery chains jacking up prices for profits. And it's not, of course, it's not about pumping money into the Fed and making trillions and trillions of dollars in quantitative easing. That's not it at all. And this theory that she has is based off of the idea that these executives are just swimming in cash from the money that they make. That, you know, they're selling stuff at such high prices that they got to be raking in money. But the truth is, grocery stores only have about 2.2% profit margin. So that means that they only have a 2.2% gap between the money that they use from all their expenses and the money that they get to take home before taxes. So that's not a lot compared to alcohol and big pharma that has like a 20% and 26%. It's not the same at all. So her claim is totally unsubstantiated, and it's just about getting more federal regulation.
Yeah, it's with the prices of the groceries, they tend to either follow inflation quickly or even try and get in front of inflation because of those small profit margins. If they don't do that, then they've got big problems. And this is really a form of misdirection by her in order to stop. You know, she wants to create the animosity between us and grocery chains, big corporations, right? That's what she's blaming. When in reality, like it's really the banking industry who has created this artificial inflation that we see in the United States right now.
Well, I think some of it definitely has to do with supply chain as well. I mean, we are dealing with supply chain issues all over the U.S. You know, and maybe that goes into our next topic a little bit with the trains. That has a little bit to do with the supply chain, but
it has a tiny bit, right? So maybe you didn't get your Amazon package in the mail the other week. You know, what happened? Where's the package was located? Well,
likely
I got an idea.
some crackhead in LA.
Right now.
where,
It's been ripped up, peed on, and thrown away.
So trains in big cities, so think like Los Angeles, Chicago, they have been being looted by people who are just coming by, usually in groups and mobs, and they're just getting on the trains when they stop and just taking everything from the trains. This is insanity, and the reason they can get away with this is because the DAs in these Democrat-controlled areas, they're not prosecuting. They're not prosecuting criminals. So what tends to happen is they'll sit in jail if they get caught. Most of the time they don't get caught. If they get caught, they sit in jail for like a day, and then they're let free by the district attorneys, and they just go back and they continue looting. And this might be one of the causes of a supply chain problem that people might be experiencing. Now, from what we've seen, it looks like that they're usually direct-to-consumer products, right? So it's not like they're going and they're taking the pallets that go to Kroger's, but they're taking like your online orders and things you ship to other people. That seems to be their main targets because those are easily accessible things. When you see a pallet of rice, right? That's not as palatable. People aren't going to like a pallet of rice as much as like the newest iPad.
Yeah. Well, actually, the thievery spreads way beyond just trains. I mean, we've seen like an increase of the smash and grabs. I just I think earlier this summer we saw that string of cases where people were just running into Apple stores in groups of
Yeah.
like dozens, just grabbing every
Organized looting
iPad.
is what they called it. Organized looting. They had cars
Yeah.
waiting out front, and people they purposely stole just under $1,000 so they couldn't be charged with the serious crimes. Yeah, it was all organized, and that's what happens when you have lack of consequences.
Well, and that's the biggest issue too with the reason they're giving is the pandemic. But basically, if you steal under $1,000, the police likely won't even show up. They're only taking felony cases for the most part, which is 1,000. If you do a misdemeanor, which is stealing less than 1,000, yeah, you're off good. You're fine.
I mean, so many products are, under $1,000. You could just get a full cart of stuff, and and that's just crazy. This is what a lawless society looks like. It's a third world society, and in these cities, and it emphasizes the importance of having local supply chains. In both of these issues, they can be mitigated in both these stories. The problems by having a more local supply chain, so that you're not shipping products from all around the country or the world, and you're not, and you actually have accountability for the law enforcement near you. But yeah, like go into your local grocery chain that's not like the big, like a big chain grocery chain, and go to a local one. They don't have these kinds of problems because they will actually stop the people. But you go to Walmart or Kroger, and if they're getting looted, like, frequently they're given orders to not interfere. Just don't interfere with the people doing it. Just let it happen, and then just call the police and report it. And that doesn't solve anything in these cities, in these areas.
Well, not only that, but if you're trying to avoid the rising cost of meat and other, commodities that are in short stock, going to the local grocery store will likely prevent that. Much of the inflation or rise in prices we're seeing is from the big chains that are having, surprisingly, the hardest time finding new supply lines for all the basic goods. Local grocery stores, often they have a local supplier and they have no problems right now.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into, some areas, some states are doing a lot better than others when it comes to these supply chain and inflation issues. One of the states that is doing pretty well is Florida, with their job creation and their general economy. If you look at, Governor DeSantis, he announced recently that their monthly budget in December 2021, for example, was $500 million over the estimated costs, which is crazy. They're running a super surplus down there, just by having common sense, local practices, local laws, and the lack of mandates and the lack of police being forced to shut down businesses. It's a huge distinction between a state like California, which has significantly more people, but significantly less growth economically.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people can say, well, it's like a lot of there's a lot of things that can factor into this, but the biggest thing is there's no shackles on the people there. They're not locking down their cities. It's not a totalitarian regime in Florida right now. It's an open. It's damn near as normal as possible. And when you got people that not being restricted in any way, not being forced or being coerced to stay at home, you got growth. You've got prosperity, and we're seeing that right now. It's a fantastic show and tell. Not only as a state, but as an economy as itself on the world stage, that this is how it should be done. And this is how people should be fighting. And this is a great way to show other countries and states why our policies work. And it's not policies that are only affecting the rich. 114,000 more jobs. That's jobs and businesses. That's huge. That's not corporations. That's businesses being created. That's multiple jobs on the small levels being created. And that is the biggest part of this. That's huge. It's fantastic. And it's not being done with mandates. It's being done with the opposite. It's being done with letting off restrictions, which is how this should work.
Yeah, being able to run a surplus like that, you're able to use the government for purposes that it should be used for in the first place, which is when gas prices start to skyrocket. DeSantis announced that they were doing a $1 billion gas tax holiday, which would basically remove $1 billion of taxes from gas directly, which means that the prices can be lower than what they would otherwise be forced to do. But that can only happen if you're running a $15 billion surplus like they are. That's the benefits of running your local economy well. And running your, and this principle also applies to small businesses. Nowadays, we are told to, we want to leverage everything and just finance everything and have no cash reserves and just try and keep your momentum moving forward. That's fine, but it's not a stable business practice. It's not a very good way to build long-term sustainable wealth. Just by trying to leverage everything, have no cash reserves, and just hope that momentum and luck gets you past the finish line.
Yeah, and when it says that you have 15 billion with a B in reserve, that's not 15 billion in debt. That's a reserve for emergencies, which is what everyone should have. You need to have cash on you. That's what businesses need to have. They need to have cash on them for emergencies. And regardless of whether or not you're a good business person, bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to smart people, and bad things happen to careful people. You cannot avoid bad situations. The way that you deal with them is whether or not they're going to ruin you. And the way to do that is to have cash on hand, cash safe. And this is a demonstration of it. And it's a demonstration of being good stewards with other people's money. That's 15 billion in their taxpayers' money. That's great.
And in the age of inflation, just a disclaimer, maybe you don't have it in U.S. dollars, maybe you have it in gold or silver or maybe not Bitcoin,
Oil.
but you have it in other assets that can be quickly liquidized. But you need those kinds of reserves. In the age of inflation, where we're seeing ridiculous rates, and we're probably going to see more, maybe not a great idea to keep all of your cash in dollars. But what we're talking about is liquid capital, the ability to move value around quickly.
One of the first things you can do with an idea is just think of it, instead of money, think of it as purchasing power. How much purchasing power do you have stored? And when you start looking at it in terms of purchasing power, your eyes start to widen with how much you could buy with commodities that you would be able to liquidate that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, typically it's very easy to find like buyers and sellers for gold and silver that you acquire, and so don't feel like you have to buy gold and keep it for your entire life. Buy silver and keep it your entire life. That's not. You don't need to do that. It can be used as a store of value in the short term as well as the long term.
So why don't we move on to some good news this week? The Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court has decided that the vaccine mandate, as mandated by OSHA, where every business with over 100 employees would have to submit to OSHA the vaccination status of every employee, and for every employee that is not vaccinated, they'd be fined, I believe it was $10,000. But it was struck down by the Supreme Court. So that's some good news. On the other hand, the Supreme Court ruled that the the mandate could be applied to healthcare workers. That's all right for the time being, but you know, I think the vast majority of Americans are just relieved that their jobs are not on the table as of right now. But uh, if we build a parallel economy, one of the benefits of a parallel economy is that we can sort of try to sidestep these restrictions any way we can, and hopefully, if the parallel economy becomes powerful enough, we can just we do not have to follow these horrible, unconstitutional mandates.
Yeah, the first decision when it comes to OSHA was a 6-3 decision, 6-3, and all the conservative justices ruled against the mandate, and the liberals voted for the mandate. And it was struck down related. It was on grounds related to the idea that the Congress had to have given OSHA that power when it was created, or in subsequent years have given that power to OSHA, and they have not. So it was more of a legalistic argument that it goes beyond OSHA's congressional power that they were given. And then the second decision when it comes to healthcare workers was through Medicare and Medicaid. Basically, if your program or facility receives money from Medicare or Medicaid, then you might be subject to the mandate. And so that decision was a 5-4 decision, and where the liberals were for it, and Roberts and Kavanaugh sided with the liberals in this case. And their basic reasoning, what it boils down to, is that if you receive government money, you must follow the government rules. That's the basic conclusion that they came to. And so if you want to make your business model reliant upon government funding, then when they come knocking on your door telling you got to do something or we'll remove your funding, you gotta do it or your business goes down. And that's very much anti-parallel economy. So as you're going out there looking at making businesses, make sure that you minimize the effect of government funding on your businesses. You can take advantage of grants and things like that, but if it revolves, if the entire business model revolves around government funding, then it's not a parallel economy business. You're stuck to the system.
You just cannot let outside forces affect the direction your business is going or your values, whether that be the government or other forces like financial institutions.
Now, this is on CNBC. They're quoting the ruling here, and it says that the 5-4 majority states that we agree with the government that the Health and Human Services Secretary's rule fall within the authorities that Congress has conferred upon him, said the majority, writing that the rule fits neatly within the language of the statute. After all, ensuring that providers take steps to avoid transmitting a dangerous virus to their patients is consistent with the fundamental principles of the medical profession. First, do no harm, the majority opinion read. Now, the four consenting opinion, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Coney Barrett, were the dissenting opinions. And one of the things Alito said is, now don't fret, this is something that is interesting. He goes, I do not think that the federal government is likely to be able to show that Congress has authorized the unprecedented step of compelling over 10 million, that's 10 million, healthcare workers to be vaccinated on pain of being fired. And that is his dissenting opinion. That's going to be something that they have to wait for. And the beauty about this is some people will say, why did it take so long? Like, come on. Like, people have been suffering already. But you have to understand that the goal of the Supreme Court is not to act on its own. The goal of the Supreme Court is to respond to cases presented to them. The liberals on the side of the court want it to be just like the other two governing bodies.
Hey guys, sorry about that. We had some technical issues, but continue, Jacob.
So what I was saying before we had that technical difficulty is that the dissenting opinion of Justice Alito is he's quoted in saying, "I do not think that the federal government is likely to be able to show that Congress has authorized the unprecedented step of compelling over 10 million healthcare workers to be vaccinated on pain of being fired." Now that's important. Now it does show that it's not just about the dangers of the virus. There's some legalese there, which is what the government thinks is the way to get over the laws set by impeding the laws of the states is by offering money. And if you take that money, like Kay said, you have to follow their rules. And so that's been a loophole for decades that the federal government uses, especially in education, to compel schools to follow their rules. If you want our money, follow our rules, not our laws. But I wanted to say a lot of people that I know and that a lot of people I've heard on the news are upset that it took this long for this to come out, for this to be declared unconstitutional. And I think that's mainly because there's been a precedent set by the left over the past, before Trump, the past 8 years, and also a lot by the Bush administration on ruling by fiat. Instant response, no checks and balances of power. And it's interesting to say that the Supreme Court was not created to be an independent body creating laws on its own. It was meant to be a body that just purely interpreted laws brought to the court. Now, what does that mean? That means that the Supreme Court is not supposed to find a case that it wants to. It's not supposed to go out and search for cases. It is supposed to hear cases being appealed and being presented, and then rule on them that way. And that's why it took so long. It is an actual demand that the American people follow the laws that were presented to them from the Constitution and take up the responsibility of calling out the federal government. Because there's a fourth branch of our system of government. It's the people. And the Supreme Court operates purely on the cases that it is brought to. That's why this took longer than normal. And it's important to not think that we can just throw in cases or say, hey, make this unconstitutional. That's not how it works. That's not how it should work, because that's not what the majority believes in. Well, 4 out of the 6 majority believe in that. There's still rules out on the other 2. But it's important to understand that, yes, it will take time to do this, but this is the way it should be done. This is our government. This is our Supreme Court at its finest. This is how it was designed, and this is the result we wanted. It is airtight, sealed, unbreachable. This is how you sustain a republic right here. So I just wanted to say that before we move on.
If only we lived in a republic. But what this also has credence to, this whole concept of not taking their money, so you're not bound by their rules. There's another story that we didn't go over before the show, but I just popped in my head that relates to this. Do you guys know One America News Network, OAN?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I know what you're going to talk about.
So they just got. It was revealed through legal proceedings, through discovery, that 90% of their revenue comes from a contract with a company owned by parent company AT&T. AT&T also owns CNN. So OAN got bombed with activists, and the AT&T just canceled their contract with OAN through DirecTV. And so now they will, their business model, even their own lawyers said that if that contract were to be canceled, the entire network would be out of business the next day. And that happened. And so OAN just completely collapsed because they were dependent upon a non-parallel economy business. They were dependent upon AT&T, who owns CNN. They're part of that establishment. They're part of the corporate communists. And once it was discovered, the way these corporations work with layers of different ownership is that they're not all communicating to each other at once. It's not like they all gather in one room and just talk about what they're going to do. It's people talking to people, and communication takes time. And apparently they didn't know that they were also funding OAN. And so that they shut that down when they learned about it. and now that entire network is just gone. Whatever you think of that network, whether you liked it or not, they tried to make something independent, and they have failed because they relied upon the communist system, the corporate communist system. So we'll see how they do if their direct-to-consumer service can make it. But it's looking like they're pretty dead right now.
By the way, it wasn't just AT&T. It was other. It was every single other major cable provider. So that includes Comcast. I'm sure it includes DirecTV. All these companies in one coordinated strike struck
Yeah,
it
they
down.
did. And this kind of rings a bell. What happened around, I don't know, November 2020 to a up-and-coming media company that was getting all kinds of buzz? Oh, I remember, Parlor. This is almost exactly what happened to Parlor. When you have a company that is built on something not its own, and you find out that it is a part of the system, just like One American News, what happens? The floor is ripped out from under you, and you have no foundation to fall on. And that's what happened. Everything crumbled. It was done. Amazon took their servers down. It wasn't like, hey, no, you can't do this. No, it was like, no. They ripped the servers out of the wall. And so Parler had nothing to stand on and is building back up. But you don't get that momentum back.
Yeah.
Well, Parler was a honeypot, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, luckily,
but the people that were using it didn't know that, so that's kind of huge, though. Like, if you don't realize that, you've got these people that are falling into this trap. Just like I'm not saying One American News is this trap, but there's a whole side to them that is not being explained and told. And a lot of people on our side are falling for it, hook, line, and sinker, only because of the title. Oh, One American News, I like that. Who funds them? Oh, it's not important. They're One American News. No. It's not how that works. You got to and that's what it comes back to, vetting your businesses. It is your responsibility. You can't blame anybody else but yourself when you're fooled. It is your responsibility to vet the businesses that you pay for and that you patronize.
Luckily, Gab already went through those growing pains of being completely deplatformed from everything. So we have a social media that already exists, that everybody can be on, that is free and supports things like free speech and is actually an American company that is pro-America. So, if you believe in those kinds of values, then you should probably be on Gab. And if you don't believe in those kinds of values, you should probably be on Gab too. So that's that.
Because everyone believes in censorship until it happens to them.
Yes. Now let's go to our last little story bit today. Let's talk about BlackRock. Okay, BlackRock.
Those guys.
BlackRock.
How dare they?
If you don't know what BlackRock is, you can go ahead and just look it up. Pause the podcast and look it up. I'm assuming that most people know what it is by now. But it's a big financial company. They own a lot of stuff. And over the past 2 years, they have been buying up homes like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All over the place. And
coming to a town near you.
In a world where you don't own a home. Where all of your neighborhood is owned by one company. Introducing BlackRock for all ages. Yeah, this is something that's out of why would someone do this? Let's go to the why. BlackRock is one of the biggest asset managers of all time. It's second to one company, and that is called Vanguard. And we're not going to go down that road. But BlackRock operates with trillions of dollars a year. Not with a B, it's T. Trillions. I'm pretty sure it's like $11 trillion. And so these people
30 trillion.
What?
30 trillion from what we read.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. I even undercut it. But you've got people in the federal government, like the Fed, like Janet Yellen and Elizabeth Warren, are trying to appeal to BlackRock and also try to convince American people that if BlackRock failed, wouldn't that have a terrible effect on our economy? Would a $30 trillion business crash the world economy? It needs to be deemed too big to fail. Now, what does that mean? That means government subsidy. That means government backing and regulation. That means business in bed with government. And that never works out. So that means, and Kay is going to take over and explain this, that means what for the American housing industry right now?
Well, when you have free money and financing flowing all around the place, you're able to get debt on houses, single family homes easily, and you increase the population through immigration. Land is finite, and that will, and you also put into pressure inflationary pressures on the currency itself. That means that property and land and homes will skyrocket in value, and this sort of is a coordinated effort, let's say, in order to extract a lot of value from the American people. It's a money grab, it's a cash grab, and they're doing this currently by purchasing a lot of single-family homes that average Americans would have bought. And what they're doing is they're going into cities and neighborhoods, one neighborhood at a time, and they are buying up a bunch of houses for 15, 20, 30% over asking price. And they're pumping the prices of those houses, and they're going to make a lot of money that way. And the way that we can combat this kind of financial predatory behavior on single-family homes is that you don't sell to BlackRock. Like you just don't do it. Don't sell to an institutional buyer. You find individuals who want to buy your home if you need to sell your home at all. But also just make sure that you have property, that you're owning the home that you live in, because in the era of inflation, we might see, the way that inflation works is that assets, their prices are driven up significantly over time, especially if they compound over years of inflation. And so you want to quickly now get a hold of those assets so that when the inflation does hit, you don't have to pay $1 million for what used to be $100,000 home. But also, if there's any kind of, it also sort of hedges against deflation too. If the dollar were to lose its value, if nobody wanted to buy things in the dollar, you could use the house as collateral for whatever new currency or precious metal or insert crypto here, and you could use that house as value against that.
Well, guys, buy now or buy never,
one thing
right?
before we go, I wanted to say something. This is just speculation. But why would a $30 trillion company want more money? What incentivizes them? What incentivizes them? I'm not saying
Here's the
greed.
thing.
What incentivizes a company to just start spending money on houses in the U.S.? Is there something else there?
Look, they don't need more money. They need more control. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's about control. It's when it comes to real estate specifically, the word real estate has its origin in real estate, which is the royal's estate. Real means royal, so it's the kings, it's the rulers, it's the it's the landlords, it's the lords of the land. They're the ones who own the property, and they're the wealthy and the privileged, and you have to be one of those people. You have to own your own property. Otherwise, that's what they're doing. They're the most successful royalty who are buying property in pretty much human history at this point.
And so, if you don't want to, if you can't, if you want to think of it in terms of a moral fight, it's better to look at it because if the dollars don't make sense, it's fine. And it can get a little crazy. $30 trillion. Would they want my home? Well, when you get to that rich and you get to that powerful, all you want is more power. You've got all the money in the world. You can buy anything. The one thing that money will buy you, the only thing that will satisfy that hunger is more power. And that power turns into control. And if they can control where you live, and if they can take away your right to own property just because they bought everything else, they don't have to pass a single law. It's this disguise of, we're paying over the dollar amount. We're flooding the market with cash. We're overpaying. We're investing back. They're investing to make a permanent class of renters. And that's not just in one area. That is across the country and across the world. And they're doing this first this way right now. But it's important to think of this as a moral issue, not just a monetary or an economic issue. Because it's about our homes, our right to property. And I think that's a good place to close it.
Yes, you will own nothing, you will live in a pod, and you will be happy. We're going to go ahead and land the plane now. This ParaBiz Podcast has been brought to you by ParaBiz Media. Here we have I'm K, we have Pi, and we have Jay here on this podcast. You can go ahead and visit our website at parabiz.biz. That's parabiz.biz. And you can follow us on socials. Just go to your favorite social site and go to @ParaBiz Media, and we are there. So thanks for listening to us, and you guys can close it out.
See y'all.
Well, thank you all much for listening again. This has been episode 2, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. And keep buying in the parallel economy.